Okay, peace and blessings, folks. Welcome to another
Oh,
episode of the Prolific Perspective Podcast. Today, I have a very special guest. She is the founder of Hidden Values Bookkeeping, and her name is Miss Lakeisha Scott. What's up, Miss Lakeisha? How you doing? It's a pleasure.
filthy. How are you?
I'm doing
Thank you
pretty
for having
good.
me on.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's an honor and a pleasure, man. I really do. I appreciate you taking the time to come, stop by and talk business with the people.
Right. Well, no problem. I actually thank you for even allowing me to come on. This is something that I find that's very, very near and dear to my heart. And you're working with small businesses. Because at one point I'm still a small business per se, when the grand scheme of things, if you look at Walmart, I'm a small business.
Right,
But
right.
um, there was a point where I just started as well. And it was years and years ago in my 20s when I first started my very first business. And I remember being very confused and not really understanding. Like, I knew the business side. Why else would you start? You know what you're doing business wise. But when it came to the money that I was generating, revenue I was generating, I know when it came to tax season, one of the questions that was asked to me was, am I cash accrual basis or accrual basis? And I was like, I don't know. I have no idea. So
Right.
things like that kind of puzzled me. And I wanted more direction, but I didn't have anybody in my life to give me that direction. No blame on anybody. It's just I had to learn it. And
Right.
ever since then, I returned to school, got a couple of degrees, and I learned it. And I felt like if I was as successful as I was, and having, not having a degree, but then going to get the degree, I can imagine how successful I would be after having those degrees. And it, proved to be very true. So since then, and I knew the struggle that I had, I do all I can to help, other small businesses understand their business. And I've actually, we'll talk about it, but I actually break it up in two different foundations I found to be very, very important in business that keeps you going, regulatory wise and finance wise. So, yeah.
That's what's up. That's what's up. That's powerful. That's the
Yeah.
same. I got a strong passion for it. Trial and error. First business I just started,
Yes.
just to start. Didn't really have any clue on what I was doing, but I just did it, because I knew that was what I was kind of, taught to do, or at least people that started before me, told me to do. However, I learned a lot in that process, and it's trial and error, and I could take all those mistakes and, use those as lessons to learn from to be more successful with this venture. But with that being said, can you kind of let the people know a little bit a backstory or background of how you even got into entrepreneurship and how that kind of became your path?
Yes. Well, actually, that was actually had to be something that was just in my blood. I know that I was working as a trainer for a bank for years,
Okay.
and I was building web pages. I was training on bank regulations, all new hires. I was training them on banking regulations, policies, and procedures, getting them prepared for their job, at the bank. And over some time, I started realizing that, I'm doing a whole lot for the bank, which was, I learned that was my start. So I definitely am grateful for it. But the life that I saw myself living did not include having to clock in and out every day.
Right.
And then I eventually found out I was having my oldest daughter. And my goal, and this is no, dig or, against anyone whose children go to daycare, but I didn't want her going to daycare because
Right.
she couldn't speak. And I don't know who you guys are. I don't care how certified you guys are.
Right.
I don't know you.
Right.
And my baby couldn't talk. So I eventually ended my job with the bank and started the business. And it seemed like from there it was all a domino effect because I went into real estate, which we'll talk about a little bit as well. But I ended up going into real estate, starting a real estate business for about 13 years. Very successful. But as I mentioned before, there was a lot about the finance part of it I just did not understand.
Right.
I didn't understand why it was important to use an accounting system over using Excel. Many of the businesses I work with now, when I ask them, how are you maintaining your accounting? Oh, everything's in Excel. Doesn't work that way. It really doesn't. So from there, not knowing as much as I, felt like I needed to know about business, I returned to school and I got a master's in accounting, and I also got an MBA. And from there, it was just all uphill from there. I can't even say downhill. It was all uphill from there. And Now I'm going on a little over 20 years of doing the business, being in this business, but running actual Hidden Values Bookkeeping. It's been almost 8 years, 7 to 8 years now, actually doing that business specifically. So my passion is accounting. My passion is anything finance related and helping small businesses understand their finances. Now, when I say understand it, it's not me having a lecture or a conversation. So this is what you should do. I actually take their own financial footprint, their data, anything that they've done in their business. And once we're able to get everything funneled into an accounting system, and I take that information, that knowledge, or those numbers that are in the profit and loss and the balance sheet, and I allow me to tell them about their business. And if I can make it more plain, it's no different than talking to someone that is a specialist in hieroglyphics. You and I will look at hieroglyphics and all we see are pictures. We don't know what it's saying.
Right.
But someone that understands that can tell you a whole story. Well, I'm that person that if I look at your financial statements, you give me a minute to analyze it, I can take all those numbers and tell you a story about your business. So that's what I do with small businesses. And it's something that's important to me because I know that growing up with a father that was in the military, my mother also worked on a military base, and sometimes even in the military, they weren't always able to make ends meet. And my dad and mom always taught me that you should always have something on the side. Well, my on the side ended up being my main, and being able to do that and made it where I was able to do a whole lot more in life, traveling. I love to travel and things like that. So my passion is accounting and finance, and anything I can do to help small businesses and also teenagers in high school understand more about finance, financial literacy, anything dealing with accounting, anything dealing with regulation and taxes. That was the whole premise. That was the platform that kind of catapulted me into being where I am now.
That's what's up, man.
And it literally was the not knowing. It was the not knowing that made me get to where I am now. Yeah.
I love it, man. It sounds like there's a lot of similar interests and passions, especially with serving the youth. And the podcast I recorded yesterday with the brother, he's very heavily involved with the youth as well in terms of education and just making an impact. And I really feel like that's something that we all kind of need to do, especially those who have kind of accomplished or attained a certain level of success. It's best for us to be able to pull others with us, and lift others up to kind of continue that process, man, because it's definitely needed. And so I did do some research prior to the call. I did go on your website and I did look at, a few of the services that you offer. And I saw some similar things that I do with my business coaching program and consulting. But for you, because you're definitely a numbers woman, and I love the hieroglyphs metaphor as well, because I'm gonna have my one of my mentors on next week. He can actually translate a lot of them, and it's a crazy, powerful way of communication for sure. But with for the sake of people to know exactly like what you do and what you offer, the products, goods, and services, can you kind of break down the significance of having your LLC or having your corporation or whatever business that you have, especially for the new entrepreneurs, having it structured properly? Because I saw that was something that you offer, and that is something that I know for somebody who kind of does the same thing or similar thing. I know how important it is to have that business set up properly and to have that business structured properly. So can you kind of get into some of the details about the services that you offer with that?
Absolutely. So I'll just start from what I call the foundations that are very, very important, have to be solid. Okay. And there's two. There's a business foundation and there is a financial foundation. Right. Anybody that comes to talk to me, these are the two things we're going to talk about first before we talk about any other issues. You can say I have back taxes. You can say I'm going to bring up these two foundations, because without these, we can go put a Band-Aid on everything else. But these will always come back to haunt you, okay? So the first one, of course, is the business foundation. That's where regulation and compliance comes into play. So you want to make sure that, one, you register that LLC. I kind of am a proponent of LLCs because that protection, that level of protection that's there, that separates your business and your personal. Anything should happen where there was a lower level of care, if you will, in what you do in your business, and someone decides that they want to sue you, they cannot come for your house. They can't come for your car. They can only sue you up to the point of what you own in that business. And you want it to be that way. Nobody wants to be sued, but you definitely want to get sued and everything's taken, okay? So definitely making sure that LLC is there and make sure it's registered properly. If it's a single member, then help them understand what that means for you tax-wise as a single member LLC. If it's a multi-member, what should you be doing with the K1s? What should you be doing to make sure what portion is your, income sharing ratio and the income sharing ratio for your partner? Outside of that, making sure those sales tax accounts are being opened, especially if you're selling inventory. Right. If you are going to have employees, definitely make sure that you have those accounts related to wages so you can pay those payroll taxes and things like that. So that is the business side. You want to make sure that those are solid, because that's one thing. Most people or most business owners, the first thing that they run from, it's funny because the first thing they run from is too much expenses. If I have too many, I don't want to have too many expenses. Right. The first thing they run to when they receive a tax bill is, do I have anything to write off? Well, those were those expenses we were telling you to get a long time ago. Take care of those. So I always introduce that, getting that EIN and making sure that business is, everything related to the business is, funneled into the business. So making sure that compliance foundation, the business foundation is there. Truly have an LLC. If you call or anybody, wants any feedback or contact me and you are a sole proprietorship, and you're doing business as, the first thing I'm going to say is we need to convert that, because the very first thing, that you want to make sure of is that you're protected. All right, so that's the business side. Okay, compliance, make sure that Uncle Sam and Uncle Sam's cousin is the state, that everybody's happy, everybody's good. Right. We don't want those letters. We don't like those. Okay, so we do that. We take care of that so there are no issues. Now, the EIN also plays a role in the business foundation. We'll use that EIN one to make sure anything that you do related to your business is focused on the business. Right. You also open that business account. Now, I will say this, there are a lot of small businesses that work off of one account, and that one account not only takes care of everything for business, it takes care of all that revenue that comes into the business, but they also go to McDonald's. They also go pay their TICO bill. They also pay daycare. We want to make sure that we're separating those. Legally, you cannot commingle funds. Right. Now, I will say, and I always make it very clear, some people don't understand how important that is and don't realize that the IRS can literally strip you of an LLC. And even if you own the LLC for 5 years, if they find out you're commingling funds and you're not operating that LLC the way that you should, they do have the right to strip you of the LLC and take you back 5 years and make you repay taxes, on what should have been or considered to be your personal income as opposed to business. Right. Okay. So that's business, making sure regulation and compliance is good. The very next one is the financial foundation. That is just as important as the business foundation, because that's where that accounting system comes in. The one type of accounting system that I always recommend is QuickBooks, because to me, I'm certified in QuickBooks, but because of the fact that it's so user-friendly. Right. QuickBooks Online, we make that very clear, because they also have QuickBooks Desktop, but desktop means you got to sit right here. Right. If you put it on this computer, you have to sit right here. So if anything goes wrong, or if you need to check something, you can't just pull it up with this phone and look at it. You have to go back. So I always say they should get QuickBooks Online, because of the fact that QuickBooks Online allows you to be mobile. If you're trying to apply for a loan, and let's say you're at the bank and they ask for your profit and loss on your balance sheet, you literally can pull it up and send it straight to them via email. But definitely, with the financial foundation, making sure that all of your business accounts, whether you have 1, 2, or 3 accounts, whether it's a loan, whether it's a credit card, that information is funneling into QuickBooks and categorized correctly, so that when we pull that profit and loss and those balance sheets, all that data is already there. Okay. And of course, you can do that on your own. Most small businesses can, but I can definitely tell you this. When you start a business, you understand your business. Right. You don't understand accounting. Okay. Most people think that I can just put it in Excel and everything is going to be fine and good and dandy, but it doesn't work that way. Right. You can't, you have to put it in a format or a platform where the information that you get from the statements and from your financial footprint is telling you a story. Is it an asset as opposed to an expense? Right. Is it considered equity? What part of cash is it? Is it operating cash, investing cash, or financing cash? That is very important. Excel will never tell you that. I don't care how many formulas you use, Excel will not break that up for you. An accounting system will. So those two, the business foundation, making sure that compliance and regulation is airtight. That's one of the things that I definitely make sure I establish with every, put it this way, if you're going to work with Hidden Values, your financial foundation and business foundation are going to be solid first, because when you're working with an accountant, when you're working with this accountant, I partner with you. So
Right.
that means that just like you don't want those letters, I don't want you to send me those letters. I don't want to see
Right.
you know. So
Alphabet boys.
right, so let's put you in a position where, even though, like most will say, starting off with the accounting system, we have to get you cleaned up. Most small businesses don't want to pay the price of having to get cleaned up. That is why it's important to do that from the very beginning, so that we don't have to say. An example, what I mean by cleanup. Today's the 26th of April. You contact me and you tell me, I know that my business is taking off. I know I'm making money, but I can't quite tell what's revenue, what's expenses. Am I really making money?
Right.
One of the things I'm going to find out, I'm going to ask about the business and financial foundation. If you tell me you don't have an accounting system, that's going to be my first stop. We need to get an accounting system, but we need to start from January 1 and make sure we're funneling all that data or those transactions from January 1 up until this date. But that means the amount that you would typically pay every month, that investment for a bookkeeper or an accountant, we're multiplying that by January, February, March, and April. And the first thing, mostly they're like, oh, no, I don't want to pay that. But that's what you would have paid anyway if you had an accountant.
Right.
But then a lot of times those same clients will contact me close to December or close to the next tax season, and they don't know what to do because they don't know how much they have to pay in taxes because they didn't maintain. So now you're talking about the monthly payment times 12. So it's very important. And believe it or not, as a bookkeeper, as an accountant, the amount that we're paid in order to keep that up for you and give you those monthly updates and those meetings, you write those off as well. Yeah. So those same expenses, I'll circle back, those expenses that you don't want in the beginning, that you beg for at the end when it's time to pay taxes, it's important to make sure you go ahead and implement those. Just go ahead and pay it. Yeah. Because if not, then you run into the error or the issue of when it's time to pay taxes, whoever you get to pay your taxes will either, they're going to have to charge you because they're going to have to get you cleaned up, or they're going to do it off of a guesstimate. The last thing that you want is someone looking at your Excel spreadsheet to pay your taxes, not knowing, am I overpaying or am I underpaying? Right. Am I really paying taxes on taxable income, or am I paying taxes on the full amount of my revenue when I probably should? Or I'm sorry, I was going to say also, or have I put myself in a position where my tax, person could say, or my accountant could say, hey, look how much money you made last year. Why don't we get you converted over to an S Corp so that you don't have to pay so much in taxes? But no one, and I mean no accountant, can help you with something like that if they don't know the backstory. Right. Excel doesn't have a backstory. Excel just has cells, that you put data in. An accounting system would provide backstory.
No, that's powerful. That's a whole wealth of that's a course within itself. But I wanted to jump in because I can attest to that personally. I've been there, and I remember one year I was like, you know what, I didn't want to pay the extra money for my CPA to do my sales tax for me, and to do my bookkeeping and all that. And so I was like, I'm gonna do it myself. And man, when he sent me over that information, and I went on the website. I said, you know what? I said, yeah, man, I'm gonna go ahead and send this back to you. I'm gonna send you that payment. Go ahead and take care of that, because it just, if you're not an accountant or you're not into the numbers the way you are, like a skilled trained professional, it goes back to what you were saying. Some expenses you just can't get rid of. You have to have a team, and the CPA is one of the most important members of your team. So I definitely, I can attest to that just off of my own personal experience, how important it is and how much of a headache it is if you don't know the numbers or you don't have any kind of experience in accounting. So it's definitely something that's definitely well worth it and a necessity for any business owner. I feel like one of the questions you kind of tapped on it that I was going to ask too, because I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who don't know this information, but as far as the conversion, What is the difference? Because you have some entrepreneurs who would like to stay with the LLC, no matter how big, they get the business to grow and scale and expand. But then there's also a whole lot of tax breaks and a whole lot of benefits for converting over to a corp, a S corp, or C corp, or whichever corporation. Can you kind of break down the mathematic make sense number for the transition into a corporation out of an LLC? And then, if you can, just give us a little difference between an S corp, C corp, etc.
Okay, so to give a number is almost like going to a car dealership for service and giving them your car and saying how much it's going to cost. The first thing they're going to say is, I need to. So really, it's a case by case basis, but I'll give it to you this way.
Okay.
As an LLC, you have that protection.
Mhm.
Okay. But after you get to the point, let's just say you're making 70, 80, 90, $100,000 a year in revenue.
Mhm.
At that point, you may want to consider filing the S Corp designation, because they have what they call a 60-40 split. Okay, so 60% of the revenue that you generate, you pay towards, either pay yourself, pay what other owners are a part of the business, or employees, you pay payroll.
Mhm.
Okay, so you actually have to implement a payroll system and pay it out that way.
Mhm.
The other 40%, you don't have to pay self-employment taxes on that, because you pay yourself as a dividend. You don't have to, pay taxes on that. But that only works and is only beneficial for those companies that are making revenue that makes sense. Okay, there's most people that will hear S Corp, well, I want to be S Corp, I want to save, and when it comes to taxes. But the caveat to that is that payroll that has to be paid, you have to process it. But when you're processing payroll, you have to pay unemployment insurance. You have to pay, payroll insurance. There's things that you have to pay on top of that, and it helps out. But if you're making $20,000 a year, and I'm not hating on those people, I'm saying if you're just starting out, or that's all that you're generating, it makes no sense to become an S Corp. Right. It makes sense to become an S Corp when you know it's something that's going to help you. If you're making or you're generating $20,000 a year, then just do a regular owner's draw that you would normally do. You start and get to a point where you're making $100,000, where you're looking at $30,000 to $40,000 you're going to have to pay in taxes. Why not do what you can to kind of decrease that as much as you can, the more money you make. Right. Corporation, if you're going to go to a C Corp, well, put it this way, you have a lot more fees that you have to contend with. Okay, let's just say off top $1,500 just organization fees alone. Okay, if you become a Corp C Corp, where you're able to provide those shares, then you're going into thousands of millions of dollars, because there's acts like Sarbanes-Oxley that says that there are certain compliances that you have to be aligned with if you're going to be a publicly traded corporation. So it's not about you saying, I'm going to be a C Corp. Now, if you're going to remain private, it's a little bit different. You still have to pay those exorbitant fees to become a C Corp. But if you say, I want to bring on investors, all right, and you remain private, then you have to make sure those K1s that you provide, showing what everybody's income sharing ratio is, even if they're a silent partner. You have to provide those. You have to have the staff to be able to provide those. You have to be able to have the staff to provide those statements that you need. And heaven forbid you end up being a parent company and a subsidiary company, then you have consolidated, financial statements. So put it this way, as you increase in that level of ownership as a business, more compliance is needed. That means more staff is needed. And if you cannot comply, then you're looking at those expenses that you didn't want. You have no other choice but to have them, because you're not remaining in compliance. So the rule of thumb for me, starting out in business, start off with that LLC. Right. Always start off with the LLC. And then as you grow, as you continue to increase in your revenue, at that point, consider talking to your accountant about what would be the help, what would be the tax effect if I do decide to become an S Corp, or file as an S Corp, and realize that there's a certain time, there's a window that you can file for an S Corp. You can't just out of the blue, I'm going to file for S Corp and I'm good. You have to, I think it's the first 3 months of the year that you have to actually file for that. But then there's certain things they're going to want from you. IRS says it alone. If you're going to own a business, you have to have your books done correctly. Even if you're doing them yourself, you have to have an accounting system. In that accounting system is information that they're going to inquire of you and request of you for you to even become an S Corp. It's a process. It's not filling out, okay, you're an S Corp. They have to know, are you making the money to be an S Corp? Do you realize you cannot have more than 100 shareholders? There are certain stipulations you have to have in order to even become an S Corp, you know? So, and I want to say from the last time that I did an S Corp, those fees that you have to pay, those are non-refundable. So you want to make sure that you're not filing for an S Corp just to be doing it for fun, you know, just to get the practice, you know. So hopefully that answers your question. Just know that each tier, everything that you add on to the business as you make it a larger and larger business from S Corp to C Corp, there's more compliance, there's more regulations that you have to contend with. Where with an LLC, there are some, they're just much easier to, you know, form and you start working as opposed to having stipulations when it comes to S Corp and C Corps. Yeah.
No, that definitely answers the question. And as you were, you know, breaking it down, a few other questions popped in my mind. So I run in a group of multiple groups that I'm a part of in terms of entrepreneurship. And one of the questions that I have, as far as I know, with LLCs, you can get out-of-state LLCs, or you can open up your LLC in different states and you know, do business in those states. Is that the same with S Corps and corporations, or is it national when you go S Corp and corporation? Is it just one S Corp or corporation for the whole United States, or do you have the ability to open up the Corp and do business in other states as well? How does that work?
So your S Corp is directly tied to whichever company you're filing the S Corp for. So put it this way, if you're filing for an S Corp as an S Corp, but I'm doing it for ABC Technologies, but I also have EF Technologies. That S Corp is for ABC because that's what you put on the application. Okay, so for each one, you have to have that designation for that particular S Corp, from my understanding. Okay, but I have not had anybody that had more than one business that did an S Corp. I was gonna, you asked me about the S Corp. Yeah, so individually per business, you have to make sure you're approved to be an S Corp for that business. Because you can have one business that's completely thriving and you file as an S Corp, but the other may not be. And you probably don't need to file as an S Corp with that one. Okay, there's certain documentation that comes with that designation as well that would be attached. Like, bless you, like put it this way, an LLC, anything related to the LLC is going to be tied to that EIN. That includes that S Corp. When you file for your taxes, you have that Schedule C. You have to have a Schedule C for each one of your businesses. Same thing with your S Corp for each one of the businesses.
Gotcha. Okay, that's what's up. Another question that I had that kind of, it would lead in the same direction or a similar direction, but I've been doing research about it, but I'm not as well versed at it as I would like to be as of yet. But do you have any clients that operate out of trust, that run their business out of trusts?
No, I do not. But personally, my family has a trust, and a lot of what we do is inside of that trust. You know, like the average. This is kind of segueing off just a little bit, but the average individual, if you're trying to put everything together for your family, the very first thing you say is, "I want a will." But most people don't realize that when you create a will, you have probate that you have to go through. You have to pay for that probate. Okay, and a lot of that probate will come out of whatever inheritance is left. Where with my family, we didn't do wills, we did a trust. Okay, and then most of anything that's being done that's related to that estate is going to be done in that trust only. That's it. Yeah. So, but when you can ask what you're going to ask, and see if I can answer it, you can ask me what you're going to ask me. But as far as clients, no clients that have done that. I suggested it. The client can only do what they're choosing to do.
Gotcha. Well, no, I mean, so that's a good thing. So you have firsthand knowledge of the trust, because when we talk about LLCs, it's funny because the video I did or uploaded last Sunday, I talked about 10 steps to starting a business, and I talked about the protection that an LLC gives you. But now when you talk about trust, you're talking about a whole nother level of protection. And that protection protects you, it protects the trust, it protects the businesses, the LLCs, all assets, everything that your family has and owns is all protected under that trust. And it goes back to I don't know which Rockefeller, but one of the Rockefeller's quotes that says, you know, you want to own nothing and control everything. So can you kind of into the power of trust and how they are beneficial, and why I feel like everyone should have a trust. You know, once you get to a certain level in life where you have acquired
Absolutely.
assets or you have acquired businesses or cash flowing, you know, whatever it is, whether it's a business or investing property, whatever it is that you have that's able to generate cash flow, I feel like we should be protected by a trust. So can you kind of get into some of the basics, you know, just fundamentals of owning a trust or being protected under a trust?
Absolutely. So I'm going to tell you what I know about it. I'm not, completely well versed in it. I just know I created mine for my family because last year in February, my father passed away. And that's one of those things that makes you where you realize, okay, I need to get better structured. And the good thing is that the way that he set everything up, it was no issue with anybody getting whatever they were supposed to get. But it also made me realize, okay, I need to do a little bit more research in trust. So for me, the trust prevents a level of the taxes that would typically have to be charged. You typically are not going to have to pay those taxes. My niece and my daughters that have trust that, funds are going to them, they're not going to have to worry about, paying any type of gift tax or inheritance tax or things like that. Right. That is about when it comes to, a trust that I completely understand. And then also what I mentioned earlier about that probate part. Instead of having the courts going through, with a fine tooth comb, everything, all your assets, right, everything is already set. You don't have to wait that year or however long it takes. You don't have to pay some third party, entity any money for you to say who gets what and who does what. As long as that trust, that individual entity, that trust owns all of those assets, it cannot ever be touched by anybody else. The only time that it can be is if someone in that trust contests it. Yep. However, I also learned that if the owner of the trust says, like for my father's, I was the successor trustee. That's the person that if that person passes, you are the one that says what happens. Right. But with that, the minute, and it sounds a little cold, it's like, oh, he's gone, so you do what you have to do. You don't have to go check with anybody else. Right. The house is okay. The cars are okay. All of the cash per se is okay. And you do everything that you need to do with it. And if anything ever happens with you, they cannot come after anything that's under that trust. Yep. So and that's one reason why we created that trust. So I think in the aspect of a business or any of my clients, which I have suggested, especially a couple of the ones of my clients, I know they're making a lot of money. We have worked on so many different plans of helping them make sure their money is making more money. Now the conversation is to create those trusts so that if anything does go wrong, there's some level of care that was not the best and they get sued. Even as the LLC, if it is under that trust, what do? You can't do anything, and it sounds off because it's like, oh, I'm not going to take care. You can take care. You're going to take care of the things you need to take care of. But no person wants to be left with nothing. Right. Just because, they might have made a mistake. They're under that trust, nothing is protected. It's a even extra protection well above the LLC. Right. Okay, so that's what I understand about trust. And from what I've studied about trust, and the reason why I even created the trust anyway, was to make sure my family going forward is always protected. Absolutely. And I'm grateful that when my father did pass, he already had stuff in place. So it wasn't a matter of, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? What it did do was like light bulb. Right. Now it can happen. It can happen to you too. We see it every day, but it can happen to you too. Make sure everything is in order. Now everybody's taken care of.
No, yeah. And these are the conversations that we definitely need to have in our community. I'm going to do my due diligence to find someone who does specialize in trust to get them on the show to really clarify. Even though you dropped a whole lot of knowledge and a whole lot of information, I feel like that's going to paint a really crystal clear picture to a lot of people. But I definitely want to look into somebody who does specialize in it as well, so they can go even further in depth and in detail about it, because it's something that we need to have. And I'm sure you've seen where somebody that may lose a family member, and then they're doing a GoFundMe or fundraisers. Yes. It's like we have to get the fundamentals, set up for ourselves and for our seeds and for our loved ones, which is starting with basic life insurance, with term insurance, whole life insurance. I was going to say that. Those are all like wealth transferring, vehicles that we definitely have to be, very cognizant of, and we definitely have to secure for our families and our legacies. So that's powerful, man. I appreciate it. And so you also said
no problem.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was saying no problem. I wanted to add to what you said. You brought up life insurance. I was going to say that. And I will say,
Mhm.
had he not had the life insurance in place that he had,
Mhm.
I would say, can honestly say, I don't think things would have gone as smoothly as they did. You see what I'm saying? Like the
Yeah.
ones we're talking about, GoFundMe's and all that.
Mhm.
I understand that some people have to do that, but you can imagine that same effort that you put in to create that GoFundMe, can you 40, 50, $60 a month? You spend that on took my I have two daughters. My
Mhm.
daughter, I took my two daughters and my mother with us to the movies. We ate. By the time we paid for those movies in IMAX, okay, and
Yeah.
we paid for the popcorn and the piece, we were darn at $100.
Easy.
You can't put that amount on every month for a life insurance policy. That's so important. It's so important. And can I say this, that I understand after so much time of us not, and I'm talking about us,
Yeah.
not learning the things that we should have, learned. You think about it, you keep books from us, you don't allow us to read, you
Mhm.
don't let us learn anything except for what we can learn. I can understand why a lot of us are where we are today.
Right.
However, that doesn't mean that we have to stay there. Okay, at some point we have to step out there and figure out what should we be doing to add value to our family. I, for one, can't imagine leaving this world and leaving my kids here and they have no idea what to do. And I feel like that's exactly what my father was. He made sure that when anything, he was a breadwinner, he was a Marine, so he's been the one protecting his family. He made it where when he left this world, we were still protected. We were still okay. And then thankfully, because I like to read, I was able to pick up where he left off. A lot of our families need to understand that. And I think that maybe it's a matter of like kind of what you're doing, making it where people can hear the information from regular people like you and I, that yes, life insurance is crazy important. Having a trust is crazy important. How much do you love your kids? Like literally look at them. Imagine what it would be like if you were no longer there. What would they do?
Yeah.
And then a lot of them will say, well, they don't know what to do with the money. Then you learn so you can teach them. Or if you don't know, there's a lot of things I didn't know, raising my kids. But guess what? I went to go find out. So I put them in classes. I put myself in classes. I mean, something as simple when I was having my second child, I didn't understand how to teach my oldest child that she had a sister coming.
Mhm.
So we did sibling classes so that I made sure she knew, because I don't have the answer to it all.
Right.
But it's important that we find out. So platforms like this help so much.
Absolutely.
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Nah, you good. Nah, and that's real though, and I love it. And that's really what the whole, like I said, the motivation of this project is about, is to really just, I feel like a couple years down the line, I don't want for anybody that I know or know of to not be able to go to this channel and be able to find out something that's going to be beneficial for them and their legacy, or for them and their business, or for them, financial literacy, whatever it is. I just feel like that's what I want this whole, podcast and this whole channel to be about. And it's crazy because as you were saying that, it reminds me of a quote from one of my mentors. He says, if somebody knocks you down and puts you in a hole, that's their fault. But if you stay on the ground, or you stay in that hole and you don't get up, then that's your fault. And so, I feel like you said, the hole that we were pushed into, yeah, our ancestors got pushed into that hole, but I feel like it's my job and we're doing our part to make sure that not only do we get out of that hole, but we stay out of that hole and make sure our children don't ever go near that hole, and I think this is why we have to have these types of conversations, and we have to work on creating some type of systems and some type of platforms to where we can really pay it forward, and to keep the youth coming up behind us, as well as our peers, family members, etc. And to segue from that, I know we spoke about briefly at the event about that you teach at schools, or you do workshops with some of the schools in the area or around the country. So can you kind of get into some of the workshops or some of the courses that you teach and in the schools that you work with?
Yes, that's what, as you can see, I had to adjust. That's near and dear to my heart. Because you have to think about it. There's a whole lot about, and I started this, our time together, talking about what I didn't know.
Right.
Now, I started a business, but the motivation behind starting that business was because I was having a child and I didn't want to have to go to, send her to daycare and go to work. Right. But I'm sorry, I keep doing it, I got to deliver.
No, it's fine.
But I want to make sure they're not texting me. But There was a lot about financial literacy that I had no idea about. I just didn't understand it. I didn't understand the importance of saving. And because I would get upset, I would put money in savings and something will come up and I'm like, well, how am I save? I keep having to go in.
Right.
So I work with junior achievement and I go out to the city schools here in Tampa to teach financial literacy. And that's like understanding employment. Most, kids, when they go, like for me, when I got my first job at 14, 15 years old, I saw they were hiring at a food court. So can I apply? Okay, I got the job. Good. Mom, can you get me to work every day?
Right.
Because, I got a job. But not understanding that when you get a job, the job should be based on your values. And I never knew this until I started teaching. Until I started working with junior achievement. You actually go through a training process with them. But in the employment portion, not only do they teach you the best way to apply for a job, but they also teach you to look at your values in life. What is valuable to you?
Right.
After you have listed those things that are valuable to you, or you indicate what's valuable to you, you find those top 3 things, and when I say value, let's say your value is to work from home. Okay. Your value is to make a lot of money. Or your value could be, I don't want to go to college. There's more kids now saying I don't want to go because they all, they notice that I'm paying all this money for college, but I can't get a job.
Right.
So if that is you, there's also a category for you of professions that you can go in where you can still make good money and not have a college degree. Right. So we talk about that. Then we talk about the way that you save money. What's the best way to save money? But we do it from a standpoint of you going on vacation. When you go on vacation, what are the things that you need? If you're going to camp out with friends, you need a sleeping bag, you need a tent, you need, food, you need clothes. Well, along the way, that's the same way with life. You know for a fact that you have a bill coming up, okay, and you make X amount of money. You need to know how much money you make as opposed to what you have as expenses, whether they're fixed expenses or variable. We talk about the difference between those. We talk about importance, and I take it a step further. I provide them with the envelope because most of the times when I go inside the schools, all the students, I'm going to get a Mustang and I'm going to drive a Lamborghini and these are high school kids now.
I know.
And I let them talk.
Right.
But then I take my handy dandy financial calculator and I say, okay, so you want that Mustang. Okay. And how much does it cost? Oh, it's $40,000. Okay. And that's without all the amenities. Okay.
Right.
$40,000. And when I go in and calculate, yes, that monthly payment, and they're shocked the payment's like $400, $500, or $600, and they're looking like, what? Right. Yeah. Oh, and by the way, if you don't do the things you need to do to keep your credit straight, let me change this interest rate for you. Now your payment is $900. By the way, did you know that you have to have full coverage insurance? Do you know how much that is? It's things like that I do. I teach the financial literacy. They have a blueprint, but they're okay with you adding to that blueprint. And because I've been in finance since I was 18 years old, and I'm 44 now. So I know a whole lot about the ins and outs of finance, and I give that to them. I make it very raw for them so that, one, they know that it's not about you, all of a sudden saying I want a Lamborghini or a Mustang and I just get one. You have to work for that. Right. 2, now you understand where your parents were coming from when they were telling you that they didn't have the funds to take care of certain things because they had to take care of you. Right. They had to make sure. We do even smart shopping. How to go to the grocery store. There's one game that they have to play where all you have is $25. You got to go to the grocery store and you got to buy food to cook dinner for the week. What do you buy? And they literally have to go through, and you should see the students there. I'll put them in groups of 4 groups of like 5, depending on how many people are in the class. They literally have to shop online, and you should hear the noise because they're like, no, I don't want to eat that. Well, that's not good. Somebody else will say, well, all we have is $25. What are we supposed to do? Right. It's things like that allows them to see, not just with their eyes, but they get to feel what it's like to have to pay for things. But I want this name brand, but I can't afford this name brand. So what do you do? What do you do to make it through the week? So we talk about all of that. Smart saving. We talk about credit cards. I love talking about credit cards because we know that's what gets us in trouble. Helping them understand that when there's a minimum payment that the bank says you have to pay because you have a credit card, that is for them, not for you. If they tell you that you owe them $5,000 and they tell you that your payment is $25, you know that balance is not moving. And
Oh yeah.
I help them understand why it's not moving and why you should always pay more. We talk about credit and debt. We talk about all of that, but for me, that is the one thing that I do, and it's voluntary basis, that if I could do it all day long, I would, because there was a lot that I did not understand about finance in school. And when I went into the world, I got credit cards and I got loans and I bought a new car. At the time, I bought this red Grand Am, okay, when it was a sporty looking car. So, my insurance was through the roof, but I had no idea.
Mhm.
So those are the things that I like to touch on with the students, and I will say that going to do that with the schools, I go to senior classes and junior classes. But I think even then it's too late to teach them, because they've already been indoctrinated. They've already been ingrained in what they've seen their parents do. And I understand they're doing the best they can. So that's not a dig. I'm saying we learn from our environment.
Oh yeah.
And my goal is to get them to see that just because this is the way it was with my parents or my aunt or grandparents doesn't mean it has to be that way for you. You say how you want your life to be, and then you adjust accordingly. You work accordingly. It doesn't have to be a repetitive thing. And that is the one thing I wish. When it comes to finances, when it comes to owning a business, I wish that I could change and allow people to see. Just because mom did it and grandparents did it and uncles did it and cousins did it, you don't have to do it. You do what you know is going to add value to your life. That's going to add value to this world coming from you. So the financial literacy with the students, I could do that all day long.
Nah, I love it, man. It's crazy because I was the same way. My parents, and it's like I said, they did the best they could with what they had, and I appreciate them, wouldn't trade them for the world. But I knew, me being blessed with being a hustler and a hustler's mindset, an entrepreneur at heart, I started selling candy in middle school, and I knew that I like to get money. You know what I'm saying? So it's like I just knew naturally, if I wanted something, I was determined to go get it, and I've been that way all my life. But the one thing I do know, for me, and I'm a father of two sons, I made for sure that my sons didn't start at the disadvantage that I did with having to go out and learn this information on my own, because they don't teach it in the schools. And that's why, another reason why I go into schools and volunteer as well, and teach as much as I can on whatever topics they have me to speak on. But I started with my sons, I want to say, like preschool, like literally, there's a brother named Boyce Watkins, Dr. Boyce Watkins, that has a financial literacy program for children. And I bought that for them. They were in like kindergarten VPK, and I made them sit there and watch it. And to this day, they cringe up when I say, I'm about to make y'all go back to school and, and learn this, watch this program. And like, we too old for that now, but no, you're not, because you need to learn all the things that most people aren't taught, and you're going to be giving a head start far beyond most of your peers. And then the other thing I drill into them is that there is no reason in the world that when you graduate high school and they want to play ball and, do this, I'm like, okay, that's fine. But you better have a business, and you better have a cash flowing business before you even get out of high school. Matter of fact, we need to work on it before you get to high school, because you have so much information and so much access to so many different things that you can use to build and grow up, learn off of and create income for yourself, to where you're 18, daddy ain't going to be here to support you. Like, I'm here to help you. But I've given you tools from kindergarten till now, where if you take them tools and work with them, you shouldn't even have to ask me for nothing to begin with. And my ultimate goal is, I tell them about freedom. Most people don't have freedom. Like, freedom it's something that I feel like freedom to me is when you have the ability to support yourself, support your family, and be able to do it on your own from your income without ever having to clock in on anybody else's time clock or wait for anybody else to sign a check for you in your name. And that's true freedom. Then you can go anywhere, do anything, say anything, whenever you want to, however you want to, and nobody has jurisdiction over you. And so I tell them that all the time, like, that's what I want for y'all. And if y'all don't do that, then I feel like I didn't do my job good enough. So it's like, that's what I kind of, teach to the children too, when I get the opportunity to speak at schools, because it's something that is needed. And a lot of these children I've seen are very advanced. There's a lot that, we're going to have a lot of work to do it, but I've seen some that amaze me, like literally blow me away, like how far advanced they are with their mindsets and, their mentalities.
Absolutely. And I agree with you, because both my daughters, they learned early as well. Like, I'm very big on reading. I read a lot. Like, of course, with what I do, I have to read. But outside of that, I always call it the art of accounting, so much that I'm always honing my skills in one area or the next. Like right now, of course, I do payroll for some businesses, but I'm still reading about payroll. I still want to know more about payroll? What are some ways that they can help them save? What are some ways we can make it more automated for them? You know, things like that, so that if they do decide that they want to go on their own, I can tell them exactly what to do. I can tell them what those processes are. But I was bringing that up because you were mentioning about, you know, what you've taught your sons. I've taught my daughter the same way. So my oldest is 20, my youngest is 11. And at 16, they're cut off. And I don't mean cut off like I don't feed them. I mean, at 16, I have trained you so much and I've taught you so much. You have earned money from me. Okay, you're getting paid. So when you turn 16, those Fashion Nova jeans, you got it. You know, if you want to go, I'm serious. Those things, those shoes, you got it. Because not only have you been earning an allowance, my rule of thumb with them is 25% of whatever you make, no matter what, goes into savings. My oldest daughter, initially, she was like 25%. And I was thinking, you weren't making anything at first. You don't need all of that money. Put some of the money aside and then work with what you have left. And believe it or not, as she worked and continued to do that, she bought her own ticket to England. She was going to England to stay with a friend of ours for a month, but she paid for that ticket all and she felt good.
Oh yeah.
I think that as parents or as caregivers, because it's not always the parents, we want to teach them, but at the same time, we don't want them upset. We don't want them, you know, feeling bothered. I don't mind if you're upset. Just do it. You know, you can be upset, but because I know how it's going to help you. You don't know yet. You think you know, but you don't know. It wasn't until a couple of things came up. My dad left her a car. Okay, she had to get some stuff fixed on the car, you know, a while after she got it. She could afford to do it. She was blown away. Okay, she got the ticket to England. She could afford to do it. It wasn't until then that she realized, wow, that's what you were talking about. When you get close to 18, the first thing you want to say is that you're grown. But you're not grown. You're still having to have me take care of your stuff. My goal is to help you get to grown. Okay, you want to say you're grown? I want you to be able to say it. But that means that when you're ready to eat McDonald's, you ain't looking at me to DoorDash it. You got it. You know. So at 16, they are cut off. But by that time, like regular stuff, you know, food in the house, I take care of that. But as far as like that extra stuff, the Fashion Novas, the shoes, my hair costs, okay, you got it. You don't have it, then you don't have Fashion Nova jeans, you know? And then over time, they begin to realize, okay, now I get it. And we also know that they're a lot more selective about what they will purchase when it's their money. Also, when it's your money, they want it all, you know?
I know.
No, we don't do that around here. I get it all, you know? You know?
That with mine all the time. They be wanting to buy this and buy that. I'm like, okay, you use your money, because I do the same thing as far as like giving them allowances, and I let them save it, and I teach them. You know, they got their own bank accounts and all that stuff, which I did in elementary school. But it's like they quick to say, Dad, can I have this? Can I have that? But then when I'm like, nope, you use your money to buy it. Then it switch up on, on what exactly they want. Then the levels
like it so much.
Yeah.
Right. You know, where you go. You don't want to go to the store. You don't want to spend your money. You want to spend mine.
Right.
No. You know, but you know, to your point, when you were talking about your sons, you know, it's important that you teach them. You know, for me, I teach them, but I also make them read. I make them read all the time. When I say my oldest, she has been doing it for so long, now she reads on her own. But my youngest, she still has to read. Every day, you have to read. I need you to understand certain things. And if you want to hide anything, and I know you've heard it before, from you want to hide anything from somebody, all you have to do is put it in a book. Well, I have books for days. And someone don't bring up a book. Okay, Amazon, you know, I'll have it tomorrow. Because I know for a fact that I can't know it all, and that's okay. But as much as I can know, I'm going to find out. I don't ever want to be in a position where I have to rely on somebody to tell me whether something is right or not right. I'm going to learn about it as much as I can.
Yep, I love it. The more we learn, the more we realize how much more we got to learn.
Exactly. Actually, the more you learn, you realize how much you really don't know. You really don't know. Okay, but definitely. And thank you for letting me come on. I'm so glad to know that, you know, I know there are people that are doing this, but I love to be a part of something like this, because I'm hoping that the information that we share with one another, because it wasn't just me, you know, that we share with one another will be the catalyst to someone being great, being knowing that they can step out there too, and not allowing whatever their environment, whatever their background was, to stop them from being all that they can be.
Right.
Just come fully into who you are. And platforms like this reminds people that they can come fully into who they are, regardless of what their life has been like or what their life is now. You can always change that. You just have to make a decision. That's all.
That's fact.
So thank you.
No, thank you, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's bigger than me. It's not about me. It's about we, and I just really want to do my part with just giving pouring intellectual libations, you know, in honor of
All
our.
right, I like that. I'm gonna have to steal that from you. Intellectual libation.
Yeah, man.
There ain't nothing wrong with that.
Yep. Yeah. So that's what it's about. So I definitely appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to, you know, building and making some power moves in the future.
Absolutely. Okay, we'll be in touch. All right.
All right, you have a good one. So, all right, ladies and gentlemen, this has been another episode of the Prolific Perspective Podcast. I appreciate all y'all for joining us. If you could, please like, share, and subscribe, and we will be back next week with another show for you. I appreciate you, Miss Scott. You have a good one.
Thank you. You too.
Okay. All right, peace, y'all.
All right.